These are both Animal Man by Grant Morrison, but they're different formats. If you're a new comic book fan and you've been wondering the difference between a single issue comic book and all of the formats you see here, well, then this video is going to be perfect for you because today we're going to dive into every format of comics. At least maybe almost every format of comics, most of every format of comics. I'm Jake with the Brave and the Boys, and thank you so much for checking this video out. Let's dive in. Before we get into the amazing world of collected editions, we got to talk about where all the magic happens, and that is a single issue, a comic book, or a floppy, whatever you want to call it. These are a single issue, and they are 6.625 inches by 10.25 inches. Now, that is the size that they come out in. Now, we're going to go from smallest to largest. So some formats might be a little smaller than this, and you'll see why. And other formats are going to be a heck of a lot larger. Some are going to collect a couple single issues, like a trade paperback. Some are going to collect 50 plus single issues. So that is what you get in a collected edition. Is it is going to be either the same size, a smaller or larger size, and it's going to collect multiple issues. And when these came out, you would buy them weekly at a comic book shop or bi-weekly whenever it came out. And once they collected a few issues, or what they like to call an arc, they will collect it in a trade paperback or a standard size hardcover, whatever format they come out with first. And then a couple years later, if a series is really popular, they come out with funner formats, which I love to collect, and you know if you watch this channel. But if you're brand new, this is what it all comes from. Now let's dive into trade paperbacks, standard size, and all the other fun sizes. So now we're going to jump into the smaller sizes or smaller format collected editions that exist. The DC Compact Comics, which you can watch a breakdown of here, and the Marvel Premiere Editions, and a couple other ones as well. So DC and Marvel decided to copy what they could from Eastern comics or manga and decided to make cost-effective, smaller than a regular comic book size books that could be good entry points for new readers. Now, we've broken down the Marvel Premiere Editions versus DC Compact Comics before, but a quick breakdown. So DC Compact Comics are going to be $9.99 each, and they are going to have a full awesome evergreen story, and they are 8.5 by 5.5. So it is going to be smaller than a traditional comic book size. Then you have Marvel Premiere Editions. These just came out, and I absolutely love them. They're about $15, but you can usually get them a little bit cheaper on our sponsor, Organic Price Books. They're about $10. These are 6 by 9. Now that 6.9 size is important because it's not exclusive to Marvel. You're going to see books like Scurry or Superman Smashes the Klan, which are also going to be the same sizes. And these are, again, a way to give you a cost-effective, slightly smaller, make it a little bit cheaper to print and pass the savings on to you. Now, I want to give a special shout out to another size. Shouts out to the amazing Josh Greathouse's Bang for being the smallest book in my collection with the most heart and the most story. So go check out Bang. It'll be linked down below. But yeah, now we'll go to trade paperback standard size, the ones that are the same size as a comic book, but you're getting more issues. So now we're back to collected editions that are all paperback and are going to be the same size as a single issue comic. So 6.625 by 10.25. Now, the difference between all these paperback ones, and we're going to break down the names, is usually price and how much they collect. So up first, we have a trade paperback. Now, these are usually the first format collected editions get printed in paperback, and they are going to collect around 4 to 6, maybe 7 or 8 if it's a little bit longer, and it's going to be one arc, which means a couple issues that tell one story. It could be like, if an arc would be like a couple TV episodes together, you know, where there's a plot point happening. And trade paperbacks, they're around $15 to $20, but you can get them for half price on Organic Price Books or other places, and they are your bread and butter. Now, moving on from that is one that Marvel does, and they are called complete collections. So those might be a combination of several trade paperbacks. They range for around $30, and you might get about 12 to 20 issues collected, and it's going to tell you a couple arcs built together to tell an overarching story. It'll tell that. So maybe 2 arcs, and it's going to give you the complete collection that you need. And yeah, I bought that even though I had the Omni because I didn't know Jason Aaron was going to be at WonderCon and I wanted him to sign something. So that is signed. Now, up from that, you are going to get something that is a little confusing, and I want to break this down for new comic book readers. An omnibus, as I know them from DC or Marvel, is going to be oversized, so bigger than a regular issue comic book, and hardcover. But Dark Horse, for whatever reason, likes to call They're big paperbacks, omnibuses. Now, the definition of omnibus is like a complete work or complete collection. So, for instance of Dark Horse for Hellboy, that's going to collect about 12 to 30 issues, but it's going to be standard size. So, if it does say omnibus, try to look at the dimensions of the product, see if it's paper or hardcover. And because I don't want you buying that thinking you're getting something oversized like an omnibus, which you'll see later, and being confused. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is a little controversial. I love them, and they were an early way for me to collect stories, but they are compendiums. Compendiums, when spelled correctly, little joke because DC misspelled compendium in one of their Green Lantern books, so, roast them down below. But they are going to collect the most issues. Oftentimes, what you'll see in a full-size omnibus is now getting reprinted in a compendium, and they're about $60, and they're way more affordable. So I love compendiums. Now, I think the DC compendiums are built super well, and I've loved them. When I first got into comics, I wanted to read Sweet Tooth before the Netflix show, and I was like, oh my God, the deluxes are so expensive, and you need like 4 of them. So getting the compendium for like $30, because it was half off online, was a way I could afford. So now when they come out with the compendium for something, sometimes it's testing the water, like Action Comics, the Superman War World saga, and we get an omnibus later. Other times, in the case of Death Metal or Death and Return of Superman later this year, they are giving you an affordable option just as good as the omnibus if you're a new collector, and I think that's awesome. They are making everybody happy. So we do want to talk about one thing, because sometimes you'll see names of a book like Batman Year 1, and you'll see other things like Hellboy Omnibus Volume 1. What is a volume? That's a great question. In the case of Batman Year 1, that is one standalone story. There's no number on it because you can just read that from start to finish, and that is the entirety of that story. Now, if you grab a volume, Volume 1 is technically where you should start, but Volume 1 will tell a story from start to finish. Volume 2 will tell something that takes place after, but it'll also be a story from start to finish. Now, you should try to read volumes in order, but if you can't find a Volume 1, Stan Lee likes to say every comic was someone's first. So oftentimes comics are written in a way where you can just pick up a volume and read it from start to finish. So I like to say don't be an encyclopedia reader, but if you need to read everything in order, start with a Volume 1 and just follow along. So now we're going to move to things that are the same size, but hardcover. So it'll be a little similar, but you know what? Keep watching. There'll be some interesting things. Okay, so we're now at standard size hardcovers and other things related to that. So these are going to be the same exact things that you just saw in the paperback section, but hardcover. So up first is a standard size hardcover. Now, sometimes that gets released first, and then a few months later, they make a trade paperback. Sometimes the trade paperback comes first, and then a little bit later, they make a standard size hardcover. And sometimes in wacky cases, DC will drop them both at the same time, or they'll drop the trade paperback everywhere, and you got to go to Target and buy your wife a comforter set and try to hunt down a physical copy that's only sold at that Target. It's bananas, and I don't like it. But is it worth it? You are going to be on average for, say, a standard trade paperback, and this is kind of relative across the board, paying $10 to $15 more on average. It swings a little bit for the benefit of hardcover. Now, why do we like hardcover? We like hardcover because we're bougie. We like hardcover because I think it lasts longer. I feel like it feels more substantial. Now, here you're going to see a standard size hardcover. This is going to collect the same as a trade paperback, so about 4 to 6 issues. Next to it is, I like to call them thicky, but some people call these like paperback versions thickies. These are thick standard size hardcovers, aka books that should have been an omnibus, but DC cheaped out at the last second. So this is Kurt Busiek Superman #1. It's going to collect multiple arcs and trade paperbacks and different stories together, and that is awesome, and it's a tremendous value. But you're like, I just wish it was an omnibus. Now, lastly, I actually don't have a hardcover compendium. The reason why is I gave away my Invincibles, which I kind of wish I hadn't done that because they're going for crazy money now since Invincible just came out. But this is the Usagi Special Edition. These were printed by Dark Horse, and they were signed and numbered by writer and artist Stan Sakai. And they haven't reprinted them, so they're uber expensive. But when they did reprint them, they reprinted them in the exact same way, but paperback as compendiums. So in my mind, it's the closest thing I had to a hardcover compendium, which again, same thing as a compendium. In the case of Invincible, it's the exact same thing. Paperback compendium, hardcover compendium. It's just hardcover, and we like it because we like hardcover books. We like things hard. Now, let's jump into some specialty editions. Okay, before we start having a lot of fun with bigger editions, we have to talk about some key players in the collected editions world. That is going to be the DC Finest, which, yes, DC did send us a gift and did send us their first batch of Finest. That was a dream come true to get to work with my favorite company, and I hope you'll check that video out. The Marvel Masterwork and the Marvel Epic Collection. Now, I've never really collected Marvel Epics before because that's kind of Curtis's thing, and he's got that down on lock, so go subscribe to Curtis from the Marvel Epics podcast. But I think I bought one, and I'm glad I bought one because that storyline has never been an omnibus, even though the omnibus is shipping to me and should arrive by tomorrow. So, you know what? I did this for you guys. Marvel Epic Collections and DC Finest. DC Finest is definitely trying to be Marvel's Epic Collection. These are good values where you get a full arc or a full story from start to finish. Now, the Epic Collections don't tend to release in order, and you won't see a volume number on there because they want you to buy it for the story. So in this one, it's Kraven's Last Hunt. It's the full storyline from start to finish. Now, one thing I was surprised about, because again, I've never read an Epic Collection before, is the Epic Collections actually did give you some extras in the back, which I thought was a super nice touch, and these are a tremendous value. DC Finest, unfortunately, there were no extras, but I do like how they tend to go in order a little bit. So if you go with the first Batman one that came out, which was year 1 and year 2, and then after that, we got Killing Joke and Other Stories, which totally goes from first to second, and I like how they go in that specific order. Then again, Red Sky's Batman is coming out later this year, and that's before. But you know what? They're filling in the gaps, and I really like it. But we got to talk about the unsung hero, the one that doesn't get enough credit, and that's a Marvel Masterwork. Now, I never understood the appeal of these. These are standard size. They collect on average about 10 to 12 issues. In the case of Howard the Duck, it's got 14 issues. And they're expensive. They're like Omni price. These things go for like $75. And I'm like, who's buying that? And then I found out why they were so expensive. These are the OG heroes that make it all possible. This is when Marvel will upscan them, rescan them, digitally archive them, and make them better quality. And they put all that work into the Masterwork. And that's why someday later, we have these better scans for omnibuses and deluxe editions. So without the people out there buying Marvel Masterworks, we wouldn't have all the amazing Marvel Omnis that we love and that I love. So I have to give out, next time you see a Masterwork collector, tell them thank you. Now, I will say they're not super for me because I like Omnis and Oversized, but this one's fun. Now, also I want to explain something. Sometimes you'll see something that says DM variant. This is the DM variant of Howard the Duck. What that means is certain covers are the standard cover, which are would be this, but it's a bigger picture frame. And that's what it released if you buy it on Amazon or from Target. But certain covers are created specifically for the direct market, which is a comic book shop or organic price books. And they'll have a special cover only for them as an incentive to support the little guys. So that is what a DM variant is. So you learn a little bonus thing. Okay, now that we've got all the regular sizes out of the way, let's start getting big. Okay, now we have a lot of super fun formats to talk about. I think it might be one of the greatest formats for most people, and definitely probably the easiest to read and the best looking on a shelf. That is a deluxe edition. Now, a deluxe edition is going to be your first that is really oversized. The art is blown up and they're beautiful hardcovers. These are usually, oftentimes they'll collect about 2 trade paperbacks worth of stories. So I remember when the Rebirth line was coming out, it was like, do you want to buy 2 trade paperbacks or 1 deluxe edition? Get it oversized, get it all in one collection, get more extras. That was the way to go. Now I want to break down a couple different things. This right here is, you're going to see Lazarus, which is an Image deluxe edition, DC deluxe edition. Now there were Marvel OHCs, they called them oversized hardcovers, but they got rid of that line, except they're bringing it back for one next year. And I actually don't have one. The reason I don't have one is because I gave my Secret Wars OHC to fellow comic book creator BJ Kicks. Go subscribe to him, and got the Omnibus. Now, Marvel realizes the name Omnibus sells. Sometimes they'll redo an OHC as an omnibus and include a couple extra issues. Sometimes they'll reprint what was entirely a oversized hardcover as an omnibus and just slap the omnibus name. So take that what you will. There are some Marvel Omnis that you'll see after this that they're a deluxe edition. They just put Omnibus on there. So with an Omnibus, you want a lot of issues. Now, in certain cases, you can get them with a slipcase like Boom does for Something Is Killing the Children. And I think they are super snazzy because you know me, I'm an absolute guy. I like slipcases. And lastly, we're going to talk about one other size. That is magazine size, which you can see from this One Room in Dead Earth. Now, those can be hardcover or they can be paperback. And this is the famous book that ruined DC Black Label by showing Bat Dong. But this isn't the raw version. That they never put that in a collected edition. These are going to be wider. So these are 7.99 by 11 inches. So they are not just wider, they're also taller than single issues. And what that means is the original comics were going to be in that wider magazine size. So pretty interesting how certain books have that wider ratio. Kind of gives you like a widescreen appearance in the art. And again, those can be, they'll still call it like One Room in Deluxe Edition, but if you look at the dimensions and they seem wider or different, usually the DC Black Label ones are going to be the magazine size. So I actually love that size because it looks just perfect uniform with other deluxes and omnis, but it's like widescreen, which is a lot of fun. Let's jump on to omnis. Now we're on to the big ones, which are omnibus editions. These are going to be the same dimensions as a deluxe, so 7.25 by 11, and that glorious oversize. They're going to collect a lot more. Oftentimes you can fit like 2 to 3, maybe 4 stretching it, but 2 to 3 comfortably deluxe editions into one omnibus. I think like 1,600 pages is the max they usually do for omnis. Any more than that, and it's like impossible to read, you know? But this is what I love. Now, I have a couple ones here. One, we have the Squirrel Girl Omnibus. That's to show that I got super into Marvel Rivals for a few days, and I picked Squirrel Girl as my character, and I had to buy it. She kicks nuts and she eats nuts and kicks butts, and I love it. But that's a huge, big chunk in Omnibus. Next to it is Punisher by Jason Aaron, which, look how skinny that is. That's a deluxe edition Marvel. Just be honest, but I know the Omnibus name sells. To me, I feel like a deluxe edition should have about 12, maybe 15 issues, and an omnibus needs to have over 20. That's my, I don't need every omnibus to be, Immortal Hulk, but I like some omnibuses to be readable, but still give me the full run, and I love that. So, that's a great way to collect, and that's the way a lot of people are kind of leaning, because when you look at it, having multiple deluxe editions, it actually takes up more space on the shelf, because each one needs the hardcover portions of it. So you can save space upgrading from multiple deluxes to an omnibus. And yes, we are finally getting my most requested omnibus of all time, Tom King's Batman. And am I getting rid of my deluxe editions? Hell no. You can own both the deluxes and the omnis. I got my deluxe edition signed. So you can pry that from my cold dead hands. Pre-order Tom King's Batman down below. Okay, joking aside, this is probably one of the most cost-effective way to collect. And when you think versus this, you got like 50 single issues there, and there's no ads, and it's hardcover. It's awesome. Now, I do want to touch on one last thing. I like my omnibuses to have gloss paper, which is really beautiful, vivid color. Sometimes they'll do matte. I feel like mattes, I don't know. I don't like it as much, but at least there's no glare. Matte is going to be a little, that matte paper won't reflect light as much. So you can get omnis that are either gloss or matte. I prefer gloss. There's one more important thing to talk about. Omnibuses, and this is true for other oversized collected editions, can be character specific or creator specific. So character specific is going to be like Amazing Spider-Man 6. If you read Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that tells one story through all the creators, all the issues, and it's an awesome way to read. And that's the way a lot of us like to read. Now, another thing that they do is creator-specific omnis, like Spider-Man Life Story. These are going to have all the issues done by a specific creator. Sometimes it's a specific writer and artist, like Absolute Superman by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. That's not going to have any of the issues not drawn by Gary Frank. And that kind of gripes our cookies a lot, because we want the whole run collected, and when there's something randomly skipped because it wasn't done by that creative team, it's kind of a bummer. But also, I think the other logic is everyone's going to buy Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1. Most will buy 2, But when you're going to 6, a lot of people aren't going to buy this until they have 1 through 5, and they're not always in print at the same time. I tell people that are like, oh, well, there's volume 1 in print and volume 6. Should I not buy 6? It's like, no, because by the time they reprint volumes 2 through 5, 6 won't be in print anymore. So you want to buy the Omnis when they're in print, because people like to charge a lot more when they're out of print and not in production. And I've never been a YouTuber that thinks the hobby needs to fund itself. We should all support each other and help each other get the comics they need. So buy the Omnis when they're in print. Actually, this one's also out of print. So that was a bad example. Moving on. Okay, now we're getting even bigger. We got a lot of editions to break down. Up first is kind of becoming one of my new favorite editions. I used to call it the Rick Remender Deluxe Edition. We can see his Fear Agent right here. But now Ghost Machine is doing it. So maybe like Ghost Machine Deluxe or Image Deluxe. These are bigger than a standard Deluxe Edition. They can collect around the same as a regular Deluxe Edition, or even more like in the case of Fear Agent. And these are going to be 8.5 by 12. That's the same size as a library edition, which I'll get into a second. That's like an Image Deluxe, but even a little more fancy. So these are going to be bigger significantly than a standard issue comic book, and even bigger than an Omni and a Deluxe Edition. So it's super oversized art, but it's still manageable, you know? Now, moving on to a library edition, we have 2 of them here. You can see Magic Order, which does not have a slipcase, and you can see the Invincible library editions, which have been selling like crazy. Go get them down below while they're still available, but I know reprints are coming. Though we still have no news on number 3. They need to reprint number 3. These are going to have a ribbon. They might have a slipcase, and these are like other brands doing their version of a DC Absolute Edition. So they get it as big as possible. They might give you a slipcase, which is just kind of fancy and kind of fun, and they give you a ribbon, which is really nice. Now, moving on from that, we have a paperback version called a Treasury Edition. Now, these are going to be 8.5 by 13, and these are wild, and I like them. I just, I wish there was a hardcover version. And there is. It's gallery editions. Gallery editions are even wider. They're 9.18 by 13. And that's going to be these awesome versions to get the art exactly how you want that. I love that they've been reprinting a lot of the Tim Sale stuff, because Tim Sale's art needs to be seen in a giant size. Though I will say in some cases, like in this Born Again, the art doesn't go through the whole page. There's a little border around it, which I know kind of rubs some people the wrong way. So let's recap. You got Image Deluxe, you got Library with a slipcase, you got Treasury, which is paperback, and you got a gallery edition, which is hardcover. We accomplished a lot here. Now we're moving on to my absolute favorite format. Okay, guys, we're getting into the marathon stretch here. I went downstairs, splashed water on my face because, I was going to eat a cookie because my wife baked cookies and she ate them all. But I am excited because this is the format I feel like I am known to obsess over, the DC Absolute Edition. Now, we have a video where we show off every single DC Absolute Edition, and you can watch that here because it was a lot of work, but I have 3 books here I want to talk about why. Up first is Crisis on Infinite Earths. They need to reprint it for the 40th anniversary. This is one of the quintessential events in an Absolute Edition. Absolute Editions are going to be 8 inches by 12. It's a little more than 12, but it's just easier to say 8 by 12. And they're going to be the best reproduction of the best DC stories, and they're going to have the most extras. And sometimes you even get little side books, or you might get 2 versions or 2 colorings of the same story, like Year One or Killing Joke, and I love them. Now, why do I have other editions? To the guy that says, do you just have other editions on your table to flex? Of course I do, but I have JLA Avengers because this is a unofficial Absolute. There's a few Absolute editions or books that are 8 by 12, have a slipcase, but were never given the Absolute name, like Dead Man or the old Hard Traveling Heroes. But I have this here to show that there can be something that's not technically an Absolute, but still be an Absolute. Now, last and not least, why do I have World's Greatest Superheroes? That is because it is the only magazine size Absolute. So this was printed like those magazine editions we looked at earlier. Jordan gave me a thumbs up. So it's going to be wider. That is going to be 9 by 12. So it is going to be wider and give you that widescreen effect. And I love it. So most Absolutes, 8 by 12, but the one special one is a little bit bigger. So I felt like I had to showcase those 3. Now, if you want to learn more about Absolute Editions and the history of the name and all the different ones they collect, you can watch that video here. Okay, Now, I know these look massive, but these are actually the same exact dimensions as Absolute Edition. So these are 8 by 12. I like to call these the Monster Edition sizes. So these are pretty exclusive to Dark Horse. And what they do is after they've done library editions, they will kind of combine them all into an absolute size with the amount of issues as an omnibus. It's wild. So they have Big Damn Sin City, which Jordan owns, and I asked him to bring it for the video, and he said heck no. So you know what I did to one-up him because he wouldn't bring it? I bought all the absolute editions of Sin City because that book's been out of print and I've never printed it. So now, you know what, Jordan? I've never even read Sin City. I got a better version than you. They also have Hellboy Monster Size, which I picked up. Jordan says he has the library. Jordan lords the library editions over me. So now we each get to one-up each other. And then they came out with the complete Harrow County, which was the replacement of those super out of print library editions. And they gave it a slipcase. So sometimes they'll be slipcase lists like Big Damn Sin City, and other times they'll have a slipcase. Now, I actually like this format, but you gotta read it at a desk because they are tomes of a book. They are kind of hard to read. So personally, I think multiple absolutes or whatever you want to call them, are easier to read, or libraries are easier to read. But if you really want the most bang for your buck and just something, it'd be so much easier ordering Monster Size Hellboy than it was to try to hunt down all the library editions, So this is for convenience of purchasing, but maybe not convenience of reading. Now, these are big, but the next couple sections are gonna be even bigger. Okay, so now the section you've all been waiting for, the random assortment of one-offs. Now, I don't really have a snazzy name for these. These are all of my super oversized books with slipcases. They all kind of have their own unique name. So here you have the Incal Deluxe Edition, which is a gorgeous collection, and the art needs to be seen in the oversized. Then we have the Artist Select Grass Cutter edition of Usagi, which is massive and the best way to read that pivotal Stan Sakai story. Turning my head, but not going to say anything because you got to look at the mic when you talk. Then we have the Parker Martini editions there too, and they were actually the first books I got that were so big they do not fit into a Calyx cube, which is why I started having to put them on top of the bookshelf. And last but not least, there are 2 volumes of the Martini editions, and they're not even size, which is the most annoying thing for someone who's a little OCD like me. And lastly, the complete Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck. That's the way you have to read the Duck comics if you do so. And I just want to put a single issue comic book up for context, and yeah, these are big. Now, this kind of part of the video is less educational and more just fun. We're going to see how big collected edition formats can go. Now, one of the funnest formats ever. These are Tashin editions, but specifically Tashin extra large. Now, these were these beautiful books that I saw on my friend Taylor Talks Comics channel, and when I saw them and he told me about them, I knew I had to get them, and I had rules. I was like, I'm only gonna get Silver Surfer, and then I got them all, even the Disney ones that aren't even comics. But these are done by Tashin, a German publisher, and these are going to be roughly about 15.5 by 11 inches, so massive. Now, what they did is they worked with CGC, the comics grader, and found the best graded original issues of comic books and took photos of them. So these are not going to be modern colors. These are not going to be digitally upscaled. These are going to be the most authentic to what you are reading. Now, they have a lot of snazzy extras. They use over 3 different types of paper quality. So when you're reading the comic, it's really gloss. When you're looking at the comic's cover, it's gloss. And when you're reading the comic, it's newsprint, but it's a special kind of newsprint paper that they made themselves. It's amazing. And you can watch this haul where I hauled them all. But what I got to say about these is they are gorgeous, one of a kind. And if DC ever makes them, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in trouble. Now, what I will say about these is you might see a Tashin Omnibus, which is going to be an omnibus size version, but they don't use as good quality paper. Now, there is one version I don't have because even I have limits. They make special slipcase editions of these Tashins, but they're like $700 for one book, and you get nothing extra other than there's only 1,000 in the world. And you know what? I love slipcases, but I love my marriage more. and I want to stay married. Now, is Tashin the biggest? No, let's get even bigger. Now, we are looking at Marvel's The Platinum Edition. Now, this sat at my LCS for like a year or two, and we often talked about getting it because it was still sealed, and this book's long out of print. And finally, we were like, you know what? If we make this video, we can buy it, and it's a tax write-off, because you got to spend money to make money, right? Other YouTubers going to buy fun stuff, so we bought it. So shouts out to Comic Book University. If you're in Fullerton, California, go ahead and check them out. So what is Marvel's Platinum Edition? Believe it or not, it's not the biggest format this comic Marvel's comes in. Marvel's is done by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross, and it tells the story of a photojournalist, an ordinary man, witnessing the rise of the Marvel universe and superheroes from the golden age to the modern age, done in a photorealistic painting style by Alex Ross. So think of this like, this is a bad example, but to new readers, this is like Marvel's Kingdom Come, just an amazing written story letting Alex Ross paint the best things in the world. And this is a giant size. It's as tall as a Tashin, but wider. It comes with a slipcase, and it's awesome. Now, there is a Monster Edition, which is even bigger. They also have a version, like there's a Wolverine Adamantium and a Captain America Vibranium. Those are giant, but they collect way less. This edition, the Platinum Edition, has over 300 more pages of extras and glossaries and all the references. So in my mind, why this might not be the biggest way to own Marvels, it is the most definitive. Now, we have one section left. They vary in sizes, but let's look at the biggest books in my collection. And last but not least, and I feel like, again, I'm stealing Taylor's thunder. I got to give credit to Taylor, who, talked me to these. We are looking at Artist Editions. Now, Artist Editions were created by Scott Dunbier when he worked at IDW. He does own the rights to them, and he does license them out to IDW if they do want to do reprints of older editions or if they want to do new versions. So all that credit go to Taylor. Thank you for teaching me that. Now, what is an Artist Edition? So when they draw comic book art, it isn't drawn this size. It is drawn at a bigger size, the different sizes depending on the artist and what the companies are using. And they have original art pages that are then scanned and colored, and all that stuff is turned into what it needs to be. Now, Artist Editions, in the words of Taylor, Scott Dunbier is like the Indiana Jones of the collected editions world. He went out and sought out as many original art pages, because a lot of times artists have to sell those pages to make money to, get a livable wage. They should pay creators more, but that's a topic for another day. Sometimes in the case of David Mazzucchelli, he saved every original page. So you can actually read Batman Year One or the upcoming Daredevil Born Again, which come out next week and did not come in time for this video. You can actually read the full story. Other times, like in the Frank Miller and Klaus Janson Daredevil or the Marvel covers, you're flipping through covers or you're flipping through the highlights. Sometimes they have different names. Jordan has a Watchmen one called an Artifact Edition. So sometimes they have slightly different names, but these are going to be done the size that the original artists drew the picture at. Now, are they black and white? They're actually drawn in color. So sometimes you'll see little blue scribbles on the side or little notes or little stickers. They are scanned in the original size that they were drawn in with color, and it's as close as I will ever come to owning original art. Now, in a couple years, if I'm a big original art collector like Bunkmaster B, you can clip this and say, once again, Jake didn't follow his rules. But right now, this is the only way I can afford original comic art, or at least as close as I can be. These are awesome, and I have to tip my hat to them. Let's jump into my final thoughts. And that's gonna bring this video to a close. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope we all learned one or two new things about collected editions, and we want to welcome you into the greatest hobby in the world and one of the greatest communities in the world. A great way to join that community is our Discord is linked down below. There we do game nights and book clubs, and you can meet new comic book best friends. So if you're a new reader, you can ask experts all the questions in the world. I mean, sometimes I'm still going to them and trying to learn things because there's so much to learn in this awesome hobby. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Organic Price Books. They did supply some of the books in this video and help make this all possible. If you want to pick up any of the collected editions in here that are still in print, so sadly, no Marvel's Platinum Edition, Premiere, whatever it's called. But if you do want to pick up any of these books, you can do so at our sponsor, Organic Price Books. That's linked down below. There, you can use our affiliate code to save $2, and we get a small 2% commission, and it's a great way to support this channel so I can keep making awesome content for you all. And I want you to comment down below which format is your favorite, and maybe we'll do a gift card giveaway. So comment down below and I'll respond. And lastly, go ahead and smash that like button, click subscribe so you don't miss anything, and keep reading and stay brave.